a WikiVidi Documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Spring season. Spring is one of the four conventional temperate seasons, following winter and preceding summer. There are various technical definitions of spring, but local usage of the term varies according to local climate, cultures and customs. When it is spring in the Northern Hemisphere, it will be autumn in the Southern Hemisphere and vice versa. At the spring equinox, days are approximately 12 hours long, with day length increasing as the season progresses. Spring and springtime refer to the season, and also to ideas of rebirth, rejuvenation, renewal, resurrection and regrowth. Subtropical and tropical areas have climates better described in terms of other seasons, and more dry or wet, monsoonal or cyclonic. Often, cultures have locally defined names for seasons which have little equivalence to the terms originating in Europe. Spring is the time when many plants begin to grow and flower. Meteorological reckoning. Meteorologists generally define four seasons in many climatic areas: spring, summer, autumn and winter. These are demarcated by the values of their average temperatures on a monthly basis, with each season lasting 3 months. The 3 warmest months are, by definition, summer, the 3 coldest months are winter, and the intervening gaps are spring and autumn. Spring, when defined in this manner, can start on different dates in different regions. Thus, in the USA and UK, spring months are March, April, and May, while in New Zealand spring conventionally begins on the 1st of September and ends the 30th of November. Swedish meteorologists define the beginning of spring as the first occasion on which the average daytime temperature exceeds 0 degrees Celsius for 7 consecutive days, thus the date varies with latitude and elevation. Astronomical and solar reckoning. In some cultures in the Northern Hemisphere, the astronomical vernal equinox is taken to mark the first day of spring, and the summer solstice is taken as the first day of summer. In Persian culture, the first day of spring is the first day of the first month, which begins on 20 or the 21st of March. In other traditions, the equinox is taken as mid-spring. In the traditional Chinese calendar, the spring season consists of the end of winter and beginning of spring, roughly taking the equinox as its midpoint. Similarly, according to the Celtic tradition, which is based solely on daylight and the strength of the noon sun, spring begins in early February and continues until early May. Ecological reckoning. The beginning of spring is not always determined by fixed calendar dates. The phenological or ecological definition of spring relates to biological indicators, such as the blossoming of a range of plant species, the activities of animals, and the special smell of soil that has reached the temperature for microflora to flourish. These indicators, along with the beginning of spring, vary according to the local climate and according to the specific weather of a particular year. Most ecologists divide the year into 6 seasons that have no fixed dates. In addition to spring, ecological reckoning identifies an earlier separate pre-vernal season between the hibernal and vernal seasons. This is a time when only the hardiest flowers like the crocus are in bloom, sometimes while there is still some snow cover on the ground. Natural events. During early spring, the axis of the Earth is increasing its tilt relative to the Sun, and the length of daylight rapidly increases for the relevant hemisphere. The hemisphere begins to warm significantly, causing new plant growth to spring forth, giving the season its name. Any snow begins to melt, swelling streams with runoff, and any frosts become less severe. In climates that have no snow, and rare frosts, air and ground temperatures increase more rapidly. Many flowering plants bloom at this time of year, in a long succession, sometimes beginning when snow is still on the ground and continuing into early summer. In normally snowless areas, spring may begin as early as February, heralded by the blooming of deciduous magnolias, cherries, and quince, or August in the same way. Many temperate areas have a dry spring and wet autumn, which brings about flowering in this season, more consistent with the need for water, as well as warmth. Subarctic areas may not experience spring at all until May. While spring is a result of the warmth caused by the changing orientation of the Earth's axis relative to the Sun, the weather in many parts of the world is affected by other, less predictable events. The rainfall in spring follows trends more related to longer cycles such as the solar cycle or events created by ocean currents and ocean temperatures, for example, the El Niño effect, and the Southern Oscillation Index. Unstable spring weather may occur more often when warm air begins to invade from lower latitudes, while cold air is still pushing from the polar regions. Flooding is also most common in and near mountainous areas during this time of year, because of snowmelt which is accelerated by warm rains. In North America, Tornado Alley is most active at this time of year, especially since the Rocky Mountains prevent the surging hot and cold air masses from spreading eastward, and instead force them into direct conflict. Besides tornadoes, supercell thunderstorms can also produce dangerously large hail and very high winds, for which a severe thunderstorm warning or tornado warning is usually issued. Even more so than in winter, the jet streams play an important role in unstable and severe Northern Hemisphere weather in springtime. In recent decades, season creep has been observed, which means that many phenological signs of spring are occurring earlier in many regions by around 2 days per decade. Spring in the Southern Hemisphere is different in several significant ways to that of the Northern Hemisphere for several reasons, including Easter. Easter is the most important religious feast in the Christian liturgical year. Christians believe that Jesus was resurrected from the dead on the third day, and celebrate this resurrection on Easter Day, 2 days after Good Friday. The date of Easter varies between 22 March and the 25th of April. In the Southern Hemisphere, Easter occurs during autumn. May Day. The 1st of May is the date of many public holidays. In many countries, May Day is synonymous with International Workers' Day, or Labor Day, which celebrates the social and economic achievements of the labor movement. As a day of celebration, the holiday has ancient origins, and it can relate to many customs that have survived into modern times. Many of these customs are due to May Day being a cross-quarter day, meaning that it falls approximately halfway between the spring equinox and summer solstice. In the Celtic tradition, this date marked the end of spring and the beginning of summer. Albania. Albania celebrates the lunar spring day on the 14th of March, and from 2004 it has been a national holiday. It is an old pagan practice, particularly popular in the city of Elbasan, central Albania. According to some sources, Ditui Veris derives from the Arbesh, an Albanian community that has lived in Italy since the 15th century. On the 14th of March, the Arbesh of the Italian coast collect a tuft of grass roots and soil, bringing it home to commemorate the anniversary of their emigration from Albania. In fact, some sources date back this celebration to ancient Illyria. At that time, the feast was celebrated on the 1st of March, which in the Julian calendar corresponded to the first day of the year. Australia. The annual Spring Racing Carnival of thoroughbred horse racing events is held in Melbourne in October and November, with large crowds attending. The Melbourne Cup, held on the first Tuesday of November, is Australia's premier horse race and is recognised as a public holiday in the host city of Melbourne. It is also referred to as the race that stops a nation. Floriade is a festival of flowers that happens in the national capital of Canberra to celebrate the coming of spring. This festival has large flower displays, shaped in imagery to a particular theme. This festival is held next to Lake Burley Griffin, and attracts many tourists each year. Bangladesh. Spring is a festive time in Bangladesh. People celebrate this season with newly reaped paddies. Villagers make various types of pita cakes to entertain guests. Bermuda. As in Canada, Queen Victoria's birthday on the 24th of May has remained a public holiday in the British Overseas Territory. The name and dedication of the holiday changed over the 20th century, however, becoming Empire Day, then Commonwealth Day and now Bermuda Day. In its current incarnation, the day has been used since the 1970s to celebrate Bermuda's diversity and unity, with a large parade in the city of Hamilton that replaced the earlier Easter parade that many black Bermudians had felt was irredeemably marred by racism. The 24th of May is also traditionally the first day of the year when Bermudians will swim, despite local waters being warmed by the Gulf Stream. The humidity of Bermuda's oceanic climate ensures its winters and summers are mild, but also means that temperatures are slow, to change, other than through the blasts of Arctic air behind the cold fronts that sweep across from North America, most forcefully during the winter, at intervals of several days. This means that cool, wet and blustery weather is typical in Bermuda late in spring, when temperatures in the northeast of the United States have already begun spiking to levels Bermuda will not see until midsummer. Bermudians consequently joke that they do not swim again, following the traditional dip on the 24th of May, till the weather has warmed further. Egypt. Shumenism is an Egyptian national holiday marking the beginning of spring. Ancient Egyptians used to celebrate the harvest of the wheat, and modern Egyptians have continued celebrating this holiday even now. It always falls on the day after the Eastern Christian Easter. Despite the Christian-related date, the holiday is celebrated by Egyptians regardless of religion. Iran. Nowruz, which means new day in Persian language, marks an important traditional holiday festival celebrated in Iran as it signifies the start of their new year on the vernal equinox. It is an important traditional holiday as well as in many other countries with a significant population of Persian and Turkic people, such as Azerbaijan, Afghanistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, and by Kurdish communities in Turkey and Iraq and elsewhere. Also, many people celebrate Nowruz in Pakistan, Turkmenistan, Armenia, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. Moreover, in some part of China, India, and Africa. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?